Dr. Unathi Sonwabile-Khanama is the tourism lecturer at the Tshwane University of Technology. Dr. Khanama, good afternoon to you. Look, Lilliesleaf is an important place and it deserves our attention. It's not the only site that's been forced to close, though. This is becoming a huge problem, partially due to the pandemic.
Yes, the pandemic negatively impacted on the heritage sector. And this sector is very, very important when you consider that when tourists arrive here, they see our beautiful coast, they consume our beautiful wine, they see the Big Five. Then they want to learn about the South African story. And that is where places such as Lilliesleaf play such an important role.
This is obviously not just about the pandemic, but it's about so many other things. I mean, it seems, frankly, that we're not supporting these places properly. There's a question, I suppose, about policy.
Yes, the issue of policy. I believe that in trying to form the nation post-apartheid, we should have invested more money in heritage. And this is obviously a reflection, a mirror opportunity for South Africa to say that we have made mistakes in how we have managed our heritage product, which obviously we can sell to the international market. But I believe this is an opportunity for us as a country to reflect on how we're managing our heritage. And I believe a lot of other arts, people in the arts have been suffering. So Lilliesleaf becomes the one which is now prominent to reflect on all of the challenges a lot of people in the arts have been obviously crying about for a very, very long time.
So often we talk about our heritage, we talk about the liberation struggle, and yet the heritage sites where things happened are not cared for. I mean, Winnie Madikizela Mandela's home in Winnie Mandela in the Free State is not cared for. I mean, that's just one example.
It's quite... To put it bluntly, Stephen, I don't understand why the ANC does not have a good relationship with heritage, because, I mean, you go to Bloemfontein, you see where at the Vryhoek Church, 2012, lots of money was spent, centenary of the ANC, but it's not an operational museum. You go to Winnie Mandela's house in Winnie Mandela, formerly Brandfort. Yes, they did build a structure, but if you look inside, you peep through, there's nothing inside. It's actually a hollow hall of insignificance. So I think it's an opportunity to once again reflect that the inability of the ANC to properly curate its history has a detrimental impact on the ability of South Africa to tell the full story, because you find that pre-1994 museums are well run, well operational, and they've also changed their business model. I mean, if you look at the Forum Monument in Pretoria right now, it is not just a museum. It is a place where you can go on Sundays, have a meal. It is a place where you can go on adventure for horse riding and other things. So I think this is a very, very critical question that also needs to come to the desk of the ANC.
I mean, it would seem to me that there's a massive market for this. I mean, our story, the South African story, is it's an incredible story, actually, if you go from whenever you want to go from. But you could really do an amazing story to tell. I mean, we do have an amazing story to tell. I know I sound like a politician when I say that. But just to think of one society that has resonances with ours on this, and I think of people in the United States, for example, Black Lives Matter, all of the conversations that we're seeing in that country are reflected in this country and vice versa. Not all of them, but they're huge similarities. I mean, just in that one country, there's a massive market. I mean, there's a lot of sort of cross-education, a lot of cross-tourism that could go on.
And not only that, Stephen, I mean, one of the most untold stories is the fact that an island of St. Helena in the Atlantic Ocean is where a lot of slaves were taken going to the Americas. So we could also link that even during the Anglo-Boer War, which is now called the South African War, a lot of Boers were captured by the English and dropped off there. So our story is very, very rich, but we need to, I don't know, maybe we must have but we need to sit down and properly articulate these issues as a country, because if we do not package these things will be lost. And as a month of nation building, this month, we must once again reflect on what lessons these things have, because heritage is about nation building, but also a nation to reflect back. I mean, look at what America had, the conversation in America about September 11th just last week, about this thing must never happen again, about the whole war against terrorism. So the preservation of history, heritage is fundamental to the future direction of a country.
So, I mean, I don't want to get you involved in a political fight, but I think I'm going to have to ask you a question some will see as political. There's a temptation to say, we have a problem, we'll change the minister and all of the problems will be resolved. And there's been a lot of criticism for Nathi Mthethwa. He's not the only minister in this. There is a new tourism minister as well. Do you think, I mean, is it as simple as saying it's this minister's fault?
I can't say it's the minister's fault. I believe that one of the biggest challenges we have is that we don't have a coordination between various government departments. And that's actually quite articulated in the National Development Plan. Because, I mean, the biggest noise about the closure of Lilliesleaf would actually come from the tourism sector. But the tourism sector, once again, say, in as much as we want heritage, but heritage is located in another sector. So I believe the biggest challenge from government is lack of coordination.
Lack of coordination? Do you think there's a lack of interest? Do you think it's just not politically sexy? I can't see why.
Well, Stephen, sometimes in South Africa, we are addicted to a crisis. Maybe a crisis like this is required for, once again, the political elite to wake up and say, this can't happen. Maybe there is too much interest in many other things. And that's quite unfortunate because if you look at the trajectory of the ANC, they have professionals in each and every field. I mean, I think they should be led by people like such as Professor Pitika Kantuli on such issues because these are some of the exilees that went overseas to become great people within the arts sector. So once again, unfortunately, because of the political dynamics, such conversations have to arrive at the desk of the ANC for there to be movement, unfortunately.
There is, of course, going to be a bigger conversation, Dr. Hanama, around the economy post-COVID-19, and there'll be conversations around mandatory vaccinations and all of that. But never mind that for a moment. I would suspect there is going to be a huge rush for tourism, the experience economy or the experiential economy. I don't know which is correct. I would think that after the pandemic, people around the world are going to want to travel. Now, it's probably quite important that we make sure we're one of the first or second places people travel to.
Stephen, that's mandatory because we depend a lot on tourism. 2.8% of GDP, the fastest growing economy. We create jobs at the lowest rate than any other economic sector. So we need all hands on deck. I think this tragedy of Lilliesleaf once again puts the tourism industry at the forefront of tourism recovery because after all, people have developed a habit of holidays where holidaying has become an institution such as going to church. So people 2, 3 or 4 times a year want to go on holiday. And people want to come into this bucket list country, which is South Africa. But we need to get our act together. We need all hands on deck. And once again, this Lilliesleaf tragedy is a big slap in our face, to say, guys, wake up. You guys need to get your ducks in a row.
It can seem to be quite expensive to get tourists to come here, but I'm reminded of a group of people on a YouTube channel. I mean, it's called Dude Perfect. My kids watch them all the time. I mean, that trip that they did recently would have received thousands, millions of views and cost virtually nothing. It's quite cheap to do that kind of thing, isn't it? It's quite cheap to encourage interest in South Africa in all sorts of unconventional, let me not say unconventional, in all sorts of new and interesting ways.
Yes, I think as South African tourism is doing an excellent job in promoting our country. But I believe, Stephen, the best ambassadors of this country are firstly us. We, South Africa, must promote our country. But, Stephen, our country also has an obligation towards us. I always say in tourism, if the cities and towns are great enough for the citizens to stay there, then the tourists will naturally come. So government has an obligation to ensure that our cities, towns, where we stay, are great enough for us to talk about them. Then the story about tourism is easy because people know the truth before you lie to them, Stephen.
Dr. Unathi Sonobile Hanama, Tourism Lecturer at the Tshwane University of Technology. Really appreciate the time. Thanks very much indeed.